Hello ladies and gentlemen, Willie here. As a follow-up to the 1-year anniversary video, I wanted to do a kind of thing I don't really find myself doing all too often. What are the things I actually like the most about Classic? I know it's crazy to think I've never really done this, I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe I do get a bit too caught up in trying to fix things I see issues with or talking about drama, though I certainly do enjoy doing both of those things. It's just that often they seem to fit easier into the video format for the way I do things, if I'm honest. And even though I do criticize the game a lot, and there are parts of it which I just straight up don't really like, I've still played more or less every single day since Classic has been released. Nothing else on the market comes close, even after all this time. The things Classic does right far outweigh the negatives for me. So what are some of those good things then? Well, here are a few of them, at least. Part of the game that many a person despises ended up being something that I actually really like doing, and that is the leveling journey all the way from 1 to 60. And as you may know, I'm going to be getting every class to level cap. In fact, I'm getting quite close to finally being done with this huge goal. My warrior just passed level 52 recently, and I've made a little start on the priest, and those two are my final classes to tick off. And I will admit I liked leveling certain classes more than others. I'll do a whole video on my thoughts of what it's been like when I'm done, whenever that is. I found out too that the more you do leveling, the journey of course, the easier it becomes over time, and by this point I'm more or less my own Azeroth autopilot. Even still, I don't really have a specific questing route that I stick to. Sometimes I find myself over-leveled for zones, or underleveled for others, when I don't really recall doing anything too much different to get to the same place. But that's part of the journey, isn't it? It keeps you looking and going to different places. And I have been leveling on a PvE server for a good while now. I got kind of burned out on world PvP at the start of phase 2, just kind of put me off it, especially trying to level during that phase. It's not really so much what I'm looking for out of the game, but that's just me. There are definitely some big benefits of leveling on PvE, which I have noticed compared to PvP servers. Primarily, there seems to be a lot more just newer or returning players, and consequently dungeon groups and group quests are a whole lot more active than they have been on PvP servers in my experience. Meaning even as a DPS with a little bit of effort, you can get a group going in not an unreasonable amount of time. Also, it starts to become worth working world buffs into your questing. I remember the first time I think I got a world buff going to quest. It was on my warrior, one of the classes that just happens to benefit the most from world buffs. I was just leaving Stormwind and I caught the Onyxia head buff as I was heading out, and I couldn't believe the difference that it made. If world buffs are broken at 60, wait till you see them on like a level 10 or something. It's insane. And since that point, I've pretty much made an effort to work flight paths and buffs into my leveling where I can. And on Pyrewood Village, there is always the train to Booty Bay after the Onyxia head has dropped to go and pick up the ZG buff afterwards. And there are mages that do mass invites and then put up portals to every single capital for free. You know who you are. Thank you. There are zones I always like starting on too. Tanaris, doing Zul'Farrak, or Deadmine, Searing Gorge, Darkshire, just to name a few. And then there are others which I think I've seen enough, like Desolus. I haven't leveled there in a long time now. Can't say I miss it too much either, and it's definitely worth a mention that I probably spend anywhere between 50 to 100 gold on gear when I'm leveling each character, which is a benefit of already having a high level on a server, so you can feed your newer characters things like bags, money so they can train their skills, decent gear. Getting the minor speed enchant on your boots is actually a really good idea early on as well. I like the big power points on unlocking new abilities too, things like Ice Barrier for Mage, Whirlwind Sweeping Strikes or Mortal Strike for Warriors. All of those felt like total game changers. Death Coil on my Warlock when leveling on a PvP server, I can't imagine playing without that spell. There are simple additions to your toolkit, but makes such a big difference, and the list could go on here really. And I've always made a point to level every class to cap in each expansion. It's just something I do at this point, and getting first-hand experience on each class is something I've always enjoyed. Sort of a follow-up and something you experience during your leveling are the different class quests that take place. Getting a new ability or a strong bit of gear from a massive undertaking just always feels good when you get that big reward at the end. Stuff like pet training for hunters, demons for warlocks, new forms for druids, to name a few of my favourites, and then you get some super powerful items too. Abyss Shard has literally summoned me dozens of free Voidwalkers. I can't overestimate how much use you will get out of this item. Whirlwind Axe for warriors can be acquired in the early level 30s with some help, and will last you to the late level 40s easily. Not to forget, warriors get Diamond Flask from their Sunken Temple class quest too, though their Sunken Temple class quests are a bit more generic for sure. I like how class quests add a bit more flavour and some of that RPG good stuff to your questing journey, be it on any class or any number of time or playthrough. It makes me wonder why perhaps they didn't carry on doing this kind of thing so much in the future anymore. New abilities in the Burning Crusade seem like the perfect opportunity to get some new class quests in there, at least for one of them perhaps. In fact, Blizzard didn't really do class quests anymore, properly at least, until Legion, where they went on a full-out offensive towards class identity with the artifacts, customizations, order halls and mounts. And there were some crossovers for sure in certain different classes going to the same place. I remember Death Knights and Moonkins both going to Karazhan to get their weapon. But you can't deny the sheer amount of work that went into making each class feel like its own thing back then. Remember Phase 1? Remember that whole pre-BIS rush era, dungeons all day, being able to hop into wherever you wanted at a moment's notice, people pouring into Scholomance, Strat, UBRS, and every other high-level dungeon non-stop. I really like that. Everyone was chasing a similar thing, that one item that just won't drop. But you know what keeps you running that one dungeon again and again and again? Because when that item finally drops, you know exactly what it will be. No sockets, no random upgrades, no tertiary stats, no titan forging, no corruption, just exactly what you expected it to be. Nothing more, nothing less. And it's so good to have things be that way. Back during Phase 1, I ran Scholomance about 25 to 30 times to get my Pendant of the Dark Advisor. 25 times through this whole instance, 25 trips back to Eastern Plaguelands because the quest item to clear the viewing room is a one-time use unique item. Thanks, Blizz. I think we skipped the trash a few times in that room, but most groups weren't really up for that. But when it finally dropped, when I was well into Revered with the Argent Dawn from so much Scholomance and the Scourge Stones began to pile up in my bank, that was it. I had the item, and it lasted me from Phase 1 to midway through Phase 3 when I finally got my Choker of the Fire Lord. And that might not be replaced until next Rammus, unless Twin Emps decide to start dropping a lot of the neck that they do. The exact same thing happened with Blade of the New Moon from Diamor East for me in Phase 2. That was a painful grind of about 30 full Diamor East. Then I got Mage Blade eventually, and now I'm just replacing that with the Regalia Staff from AQ40. I bet any class out there can relate with certain items that you grinded hard for and you used for such a long time. That's why you see warriors to this day with insane amounts of clear for Arena chasing Savage Gladiator's Chain, or Emperor Thorison now for Hand of Justice. You know it's gonna drop, and when it does, you will use it for literally months to come. Or Neltharian's Tear for, well, any caster to be honest. You'll still have that thing on at level 70 probably. That's just how good that item is. Loot is so much more simple, and sometimes the itemization is a bit wonky, but it's so much more impactful as a result. As a follow-up from getting loot, we have all the customizations you have available within that loot. On each of my characters that I raid with, I have a good 4 to 6 different gear sets, which I change between somewhat frequently because different occasions call for different loadouts in terms of items. It is quite interesting that we have so much more item customization and you bring along so much extra gear to match to certain occasions, as opposed to in retail where there's been a lot of effort to try and encourage you to set up your items in a way which will maximize your power in different encounters, when there more often than not tends to be a pretty universal best answer with just changing around perhaps 1 or 2 Azerite traits or some talents here and there, whereas in Classic, gear sets are everything, they really matter. For example, on the Warlock, I have a pure PvE set, maxing out my DPS and hit chance. The farming set with focus on getting a lot more stamina into the build so I can maximize the effect of my Voidwalker's sacrifice buff, as well as it being much better for PvP, bigger health bar. My Nature Resist set, which I need to bring along for AQ40. My Shadow Resist set for tanking Twin Emperors. My Riding set, which trust me makes a big difference once you actually get used to using it. And you can set it up automatically to equip this gear when you mount through item rack like this, by the way. and the riding set speed bonus actually stack properly now as well. They didn't for quite a while early on in the game. And last of all, the roleplay, the avoiding durability loss set. This one was used when the Gadgetzan transporter decides to give you a nice bird eye view of the area before reminding you to buy noggin foggers for the slow fall next time. That's quite a coincidence that they're sold here, isn't it? I have a similar story on my Paladin as well. A few less sets though, just farm PvE healing, a spell power set, and a full reflect damage type thorn set. It keeps me more organised, I find, and I'm still far from finished from completing all my item sets out even before AQ42 released. And on top of that, there's all the extra items you might want for PvP or utility in your bag. Nifty stopwatch, Skull of Impending Doom, the engineering trinkets, the whole deal. Either way, item sets, despite the lack of bag space in Classic, do make for some more interesting choices in setting up your character and getting the most out of what you're doing at the moment. Finally, just the challenge that solo content can be sometimes. I quite like doing solo stuff. I think a lot of people do in MMOs, and despite there being a lot of social interaction necessary in Classic, I do always appreciate challenging myself to see what I can pull off. Trying to beat my previous best time for farming, trying to solo elite quests, setting good pace in dungeons if I'm in a position to do so, and, you know, just playing well, I guess. I mean, I played the game for long enough, I better at least be decent by this point at some aspects of it now. And well, I have had to seek out challenge actively a bit more in Classic, let's say, since the traditional channels for it have been overall easier than expected. Though certainly not unenjoyable by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, after I finish level capping all my characters, I want to make a start on reputations, and some of those are going to be a real grind, I already know. Still, I'm going to see what I can get done before TBC. There we go then, just a few of the reasons that I keep logging in daily, and really always have something to do without just gearing different characters. Let me know what keeps you coming back. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one very soon. If you like what you see, do give the video a like and subscribe, as there will be plenty more to come. Take care guys, and I'll see you in the next one very soon.